Namaste. Welcome to our February Satsang. And I want to thank people for the questions. By the way, we did discover there was some software problem and that questions had not been coming through like they should. So if you've asked your question and have not answered it, I haven't ignored it. I didn't get it. So please resubmit it again. Yes, it's been happening for a few months now. I'm so sorry. But hopefully it'll be better from now on. All right. Thank you first for your questions. One, it's because of interest. I'm glad you have interest. And because they're also intelligent. You know, Sanatana Dharma is not for dummies. That publisher that puts out the dummies may have put out a book about yoga or Dharma for dummies, but there's no such thing. Yogananda said, stupid people can't find God. Part of it's they don't have any imagination. It takes a lot of imagination to be able to think of going into infinity and into infinite awareness. So then, naturally the questions are intelligent. I expect that. And you come through very, very well. So thank you, because it's worthwhile to know there are people out there using their minds. Fine. It says, my question is a long one, and that's good. And it is, you see, rather long. But I'll go through bit by bit. And as I think the Cheshire Cat says to Alice, start at the beginning, and when you come to the end, stop. All right. I'm wondering how karma fits into things. If I act out a certain way in the past, causing me to have negative consequences in this life, where does it all start? Well, it starts the first time you do an act. And that act doesn't have to come through negativity or stupidity. The first time you saw something and thought, I'd like to see more of that, or I'd like to have that, then it began. Remember, we don't start out as human beings. We start out as an atom of hydrogen. And we develop more and more complexity into that kind of form. And it goes on until then we change into another level of manifestation, and we have to spend many cycles becoming perfected in that. And until you're a perfect one of that, you don't get to take a step on. It isn't like if you can answer the majority of the questions, you get past. It's far more important than and careful and accurate than our educational system. So you're a perfect amoeba. You have to be an amoeba. Yes, you become a housefly. What people kill you, or spiders kill you when they catch you in their web, and until you're a perfect housefly, and then you go next. So we've all been insects. We've been every form of life there is. Everything. You are now, and I, are the result of countless incarnations and creation cycles, not billions, quadrillions, vigintillions of years to get to be in the human form. And primitive human beings are not much human. They're very animalistic. And so think how long it takes to get here. The journey that it took for you to get here, this moment, sitting there in front of the screen, looking and hearing me speak, has been through many creations. Therefore, you are a great miracle. There is nothing that's been discovered and cultured and created in a laboratory that is in any way your equal. There is no invention on earth. There is nothing on earth as wonderful as you. And you're far more wonderful than the earth because it's inert. It has a kind of consciousness, Prithvi Devi, but we're basically not. So understand, you are a God. It's not just poetry in the Bible. God gives them words. I've said you are gods. Then it continues, but you die like men and are laid in the grave like animals. There is the big problem. And if we're inadventurous or negative about ourselves, then we identify with the animal and the man part, and we ignore the God part. But the God part is the real part of us. So, long ago it began. Where does one get the inclination to even act out a negative thing in the first place? Ignorance. Incomprehension. Don't think of it as sin. Don't think of it as a moral thing. It's just, after all, when we were children, maybe we saw a flame. We reached out to touch it and it hurt. So we've been going through a lot of hurt for a long time. If we go back to the first time we incarnate, and one chooses to love and one chooses to kill, wouldn't that imply that we came with some tendency or intent already? Certainly does. All those animal lives. Insect lives. Insects kill each other. The idea of survival. It's long ingrained in us. Therefore, to truly practice ahimsa, non-injury, to truly practice freedom from negative impulse. If you're not a yogi, you're never going to manage that. It's awesome. Because we're going to the revelation of the self, which is as pure, as consciousness, as God. It's finite, and God is infinite. But the character is the same. It's just the scope of manifestation and potential that's different. If not, it seems everyone would just do the same thing. But no, because we have grown minds, and the minds have been conditioned from other minds, and it's different. So its reaction, its polarity will be different, you see. That will cause a difference in response. Wouldn't there need to be some different program from the start, it seems? Otherwise, who would ever choose to feel or act horrible? As again, through ignorance, through incomprehension. See, there are a lot of people, they're pretty obnoxious, they're pretty troublesome, maybe they're harmful. But you understand, they're ignorant, they don't realize it. You and I could be walking along in the forest, we meet a wild animal that jumps at us and mangles us, we're crippled for life, or it kills us. But it doesn't understand what it's doing. Sometimes we have to be that way with other people. They may be intelligent on certain levels, but we have to realize they truly don't understand. See, the great masters know this. And therefore, they feel sorry for us, actually. And they want to reach out and help us. So is karma even the doing of the one who speaks of it? Yes. then why would a divine creator choose to give one a tendency of hate and another not? He doesn't. You give yourself that tendency by your own previous actions. See, you are a God. You are created. You're the master of your life. You don't think you are because you've lost contact with that higher level, which is working it all out at all times. So you were doing it, and you're the master of karma. People act like karma. Oh, it's my karma. Oh, it's not my karma. You're not a ball being kicked around by players on a field, on a soccer field. You are doing it. You are doing it. You are doing it. If you don't like it, change yourself. That's what Yogananda said to some people. They came with a big complaint about other people. And he actually turned and walked out of the room. And as he was walking out, he said, change yourselves. This is what we have to do. How? Yoga. And yama niyama, the principles of right behavior. When I experience the divinity within, it feels I wouldn't do an unfairness like that. Unless it was all balanced if both souls had to go through love and hate and time towards some higher goal. That's right. But they don't have to. They've chosen to. Fundamentalist, materialist, exoteric Christians, they like to scare people. They think you can scare people into holiness. You can scare people into the arms of God. Doesn't happen. But they try. And we had a song. It was called Lost Forever. That was the name of the title. Isn't that great? Where is your hope, poor sinner? What are you going to do? Hope is a blessed soul anchor, offered so freely to you. If it is fixed in the Savior, on that bright shore you will land. But if in sin you still linger, sad you're in. Lost forever. Pretty, isn't it? Lost forever. Oh, how sad. You believe we sang that crap in church? But we did. Yes, that's the impulse to ignorance. So anyway, there it is. We've chosen it. Which leads into a further question about, is everything already precept and free will is about an illusion as well? Well, in most people, free will is an illusion because they don't know how to take hold of their free will and use it. I mean, one of the saddest things you can experience, I really mean that, and I've watched it. A little child has done something not right, maybe a bit destructive. And they say, why'd you do that? And they say, I don't know. And they don't. Now, maybe you don't remember what childhood was like. I do. It was living hell. Because I didn't know why. And there were things I did. Adults think that too. That somebody say, well, why did I speak like that? Why did I react? It's because there is that negativity and ignorance within that out it comes. When you eat something bad for you, what happens? You vomit it out. A lot of people vomit their life. Sad to say, but true. Rendering the whole concept of karma kind of irrelevant because you didn't really choose what you started with, but you did. Way down deep in your mind. And don't forget, the devas are with us, the higher beings that work on evolution. You understand, you see a flock of geese. There's a deva walking in the middle of them. I mean that. Or, when you see that the geese or birds flying south and they fly in that V shape, well, there in the middle, there's a deva. They say, how do they know to fly south in the winter? How do they know where to go? They don't. But the deva guides them. This is why there are certain species of animals that do not reproduce in captivity. because the devas don't want new little animals to have to be in captivity. So they don't come and say, it's time now. It's baby time now. In other entities, they do. Now, I'm not speaking just theory. You're perfectly willing. I'm perfectly willing if you think I'm crazy. I mean, when I was 9, I figured that out, and I've never had to worry about it since. I know I'm nuts, but I've seen it myself. I've seen the devas as they move with the animals that they're in charge of. It's a wonderful idea. There's a great chain of help and care throughout all of creation. Oh yes, we see violence and all this going on, but that's part of it too. There's no part of it that's invaluable. I remember a very dear friend of mine, he had a fiancée. I loved her dearly. She was very intelligent, but kind of a dingbat. And one time he talked to me, and he said she was terrified of mice. So she called him up and said, there's a mouse, I'm scared and I don't want to move. So he went and he unjimmied the door and got in her apartment. And there she was sitting on a sofa with her feet all up like this, looking down. She said, there. And you know what it was? It was just a piece of fluffy dust. It wasn't a mouse at all. And he had traveled about 70 miles, by the way, breaking the speed limit in panic. And there it was, a dust ball. And he said, at first I was so annoyed and so angry. And then I thought, that's her. And I love her. And I love her for that kind of a trait. So they had a good laugh together. That's nice. That's the way it ought to be. So, just like you can't change a movie once you go to the theater to watch, it's already made by then. You're just along for the journey at that point. But see, you're reacting to that journey. And your reaction is creating more impressions, which will come out eventually. You see, even a person who is sitting seemingly unconscious, they're still in charge of the movie. And they're still directing it. But it's from a higher level, of which we usually aren't aware. But we are gods. And sadhana will reveal it. Nothing else will. All the philosophy in the world, it won't do it. Any insight is appreciated. I know this is a long question, but it has been on my mind since I started Soham sadhana. Thank you. Well, thank you, because see, that's exactly one of the things sadhana is supposed to do. Raise questions. Raise awareness and think, well, wait, what is this? Real sadhana awakens your mind, awakens your intelligence. And sometimes it awakens you to the fact you don't know something. It can awaken you to frustration, but that's okay if the frustration is the movement to move on forward. It's wonderful, this life. It's wonderful. You think, oh, think of the people dying. Yes. I'm 84. You think I haven't had suffering myself? Think I haven't seen suffering? You know, I knew of 2 parents. This is awful what I'm going to tell you, but it shows what life can be. They had a little boy who was 5 years old. He was dying of cancer, and they could not take the pain away. And whenever they went to visit him in the hospital, I hope I don't cry on that, he would cry and beg them and say, I'll be good. I'm sorry it was bad. Please make me stop hurting. I think that would drive me insane if I had a child and I witness that. It's appalling. But if it wasn't necessary, it wouldn't happen, because God is love. And love is a force that draws, not just a force that reaches out and grabs, but draws to us. Why did they need to go through that? I don't know, but they did. And it was an example of the love of God. I used to suffer hideous pains from migraines. I mean, I prayed to die. I prayed to die from the pain sometimes when I first was getting them. And okay, I'm going to do it. What a good boy am I. One thing I learned was when I was in this suffering, I would ask God to alleviate it, but I would always say, but if you don't, I will love you. I wanted God to know he could trust me. And you know what? When God trusts you, then the ton of bricks can really fall on you, because he knows you'll keep even and going on. That's it, true. They say, why do good people suffer? First, they got to get through the karma. And second, God believes in them as they believe in him. Isn't that anthropomorphic? It sure is, because humans are made in the image of God. Therefore, the big anthropomorphic being is God. All right, my, how defiant. Can you discuss Swadharma? Yes. Swa means self, and it can mean the higher self, and it can mean the lower self. And obviously the higher self, it does have a dharma in the sense that its dharma is to regulate our lives so we'll come to full realization of it, move into consciousness of that, and function as that. That's the big part. And the less is, we have karma to fulfill. The karma is created by us. The karma is compatible with and is a manifestation of our very psychology, and therefore it is our Swadharma. Some people came to see St. Bernadette one time. She was dying and she was in terrible pain, and she was lying there suffering. And some people said to her, well, what are you doing in this condition? And she said, I'm doing my work. They said, what's your work? She said, being sick. Thus it is. Then you could say, well, if you saw a sick person and you could heal them, does that mean you shouldn't heal them? If you see a sick person and you can heal, try to heal them. And if the healing wouldn't be good for them, you won't be able to do it. That's part of Swadharma. So, you see, you came into this life wanting to know the higher realities. And so, when you heard about these things, philosophically or so on, yes, you even saw movies and so on. You were a child and whoop, Mighty Mouse flew through the air and all these things happened, and you think, I'd like to do that. That's the inner impulse. I'd like to not be a slave to gravity. I'd like to not be a slave to all these limitations. That was your Swadharma. Then there are children who are liars from birth. They're thieves from birth. Some of them are obscene from birth. I've witnessed it. That's their Swadharma too. Dharma isn't always good. Dharma just means equality. So there's evil karma, evil karma, evil dharma in a sense. Satanists, they're working out their evil Swadharma. That's how it is. So it says in the Bible, let a man examine himself whether he is really in the faith. There are a lot of people, oh, I'm searching for God. One of the most ignorant and obnoxious people I ever knew liked to say, I can't remember a time in my life when I didn't love God. Well, if that was true, then piffle the loving God. It didn't work very well for her. But there that, oh, I've been searching, I've been searching for truth all my life. Really? Then what the hell are you in the shape you're in? They're not. They've been looking for philosophy all their life, and they've been looking for insights that they could be happy about themselves with, and they could maybe say to others, I know something you don't know. I'll explain it if you'd like. Okay. Oh, am I cynical? You bet. I've been around. Okay. If I take over-the-counter medicines such as aspirin or acetaminophen for headaches or other aches and pains, am I postponing karma? No, you're creating a karma. There was a karma to have the pain, and there was a karma for you to have the means of ending the pain, and you decide to end it, and so you take it. You see? See, karma is not this big absolute like, oh, there it is, the sword of Damocles over your head. No, you made it. You're the one to deal with it. God doesn't deal with it. No one else does. You deal with it. So when you have a karma you don't like and you think, I'd like to turn it, I turned the faucet on, now I want to turn it off. Well, you turn it off. Now there are some things we say, well, I can't stop it. I can't do anything. Okay, that's part of it. You need an inexorable karma, but you did it. You started the ball rolling. That's how it works. You remember there used to be cartoon characters, they'd be running, and they'd run out, and Wile E. Coyote used to do it. Run way out beyond the mountain and then right out in the air, and then kind of look down and go, and down they go. Well, that's what happens to you and I. So then, you create karma, you modify karma, you can dissolve karma. If you've been selfish, and it's your karma to experience other people being selfish in relation to you, if you become charitable and you become compassionate and helpful, then you neutralize it. It's dark in a room. You turn the switch, the light goes on, it's not dark anymore. You turned it off the day before, that's why it's dark now. You turn it on now. You are the master of your destiny. You're the master of your karma. And Buddha emphasized over and over again, karma is in your mind. Karma is in your consciousness. If you purify your mind and you transmute your consciousness into higher levels, the karma is transmuted, and you now have positive karma rather than negative. You are always in charge. You're not a servant and you're not a slave. Evil religion tells you to serve God and to be God's slave, a slave of love. Even the Roman Catholics, some of them say this stuff. But it isn't so. What is an appropriate balance between enduring a pain and accepting it? Well, it's how you look at it and how you evaluate it. And if a bug is here biting me, I don't think, what is the best thing for me to do at this moment? Well, of course not. The reflex is to whack it. So you can decide to endure it. You can decide to do something about it. And that is according to your psychology. What shaped your psychology? Your actions. Thoughts are actions, you see. 10-cent dime store, 10-cent metaphysicians like to say, thoughts are things, giving no real thought to that statement, which that does happen to be true. But the thought, the attitude, the way it affects, that is definitely so. But the best thing is meditate, meditate, meditate. Follow the principles of yama and niyama, and your karma will melt away. Why? Because you don't need it anymore. You don't undergo karma except for the fact that you need to undergo it. And once you learn the lesson, you don't need to undergo it. And in time, as our consciousness develops, especially as we become yogis, we start saying, well, there's a rat hole there. I'm just going to plug up the rat hole. When you do it, you don't say, oh, is it my karma to have a rat chew on my toe? I wonder if it'd be better if I didn't plug up the rat hole. Plug up the rat hole, for heaven's sakes. Okay? Oh my. I hope I don't sound heartless, but I happen to know all is well. Okay. I notice that when it comes to animals, trees, clouds, or any other aspect of Prakriti Ma, in other words, the great mother who is Prakriti, the energy forming the cosmos, there is certain easiness to express authentic love and receive authentic love, parenthesis, in the line of seeing everything as consciousness, parenthesis. But why is it difficult to feel the same with other beings, even sometimes with your own family members? Conditioning, past experience. Have you ever met a person when you saw them, you were attracted toward them? Not, it's not like, oh, they're beautiful, let me marry them. I mean, you thought, that's an interesting person. And others you see and you think, oh boy. Well, you may already have some karma in the past. I remember I noticed a girl, I was in college, she dressed utterly absurdly and was not an attractive person. But I watched her at lunchtime, and I saw she was desperate to talk to people, and people avoided her. So one day I was sitting next to her at the lunch counter in the restaurant, and she needed a knife and didn't have it. And so I said, would you like to use my knife? So she took it and used it. And we began to talk. She was one of the most brilliant, most creative people I've ever met in my life. I had absolute respect for her. She had her, like all of us, peculiarities and foibles. It never bothered me a moment because she was a glorious person. But she was a campus nut. Her name was Patricia, and she was chubby, so everybody called her Patty Fatty. Fatty Patty, I mean. And people kept coming to me saying, you better not be seen with Fatty Patty. They'll think you're a nut like her. That would be a great idea to be a nut like she was. She wrote fiction, she wrote poetry, she wrote music, and it was all good. She had a genius IQ. She was brilliant in mathematics. A friend of mine was a mathematics major. And Pat went to see her and saw her slide rule and fiddled with it and came up literally with a whole different way to use a slide rule the mathematicians had never thought of before. You understand? She walked in genius. And you're telling me don't be seen with Fatty Patty. People will think you're like her. Well, they're damn fools that didn't understand her value, but I'd rather be laughed because I was like a great genius than to be respected because I was a dumbbell like them. Yes. So anyway, yes. Often in a wooden house, a golden room we find. Try to look for the golden room in everybody. They have it. All right. Can humans reincarnate as animals or even as plants? Oh, yes, as animals. Plants, very unlikely. But yes, if you have karma with an animal form, if you are in the lab torturing animals because you say you're doing it for medical research and it's all for the best and you're going to alleviate people's suffering and so on, and you do terrible things to them. I knew a man who did this. He worked for the Kaiser Foundation in Los Angeles. And he did awful things like make them have 2 and 3 stomachs and work on their spine and cause paralysis and so on. He will undergo that. Now, he may undergo it as a human being that will be experimented on by some monster that's gotten a hold of him and does it, like the Nazis did. Or he'll come back as an animal and he'll know why he's there. And they'll come up and say, oh, nice you. And then just mutilate him and make him abnormal. Then finally say, oh, let's euthanize him. Isn't that a pretty word for killing somebody or something? So we'll put him to sleep. I hope I'm expressing how I loathe that hypocrisy. So you can indeed. And in the scriptures, there was a king that had a deer, and he was so obsessed with the deer and his love of the deer that he was thinking about the deer as he died, and he was born as a deer. But he was fully conscious like a human being. He was in the deer form. Therefore, animals have a great intuition and very sensitivity to vibration, and he found his way to the ashram of a very great sage. And the sage told the people, look after that deer. That deer had been a human being, and because of attachment is now a deer, but treat that deer with respect. And they did, and then in a short while, because animals don't live that long, then he gave up his body. So it does happen. Yes, I remember there was an old lady, Westerners like to go to India and get righteous. So there was this old woman staying in Sivananda ashram, God knows why. And she was one of these, oh, look at the dogs in India, look at the cats. They don't make pets of them like we do. And all. So she came and knocked on our door. Oh, will you give me some extra food I have? Because nobody feeds these. I feed the dogs and the cats. And she never felt a bit of sadness or compassion for the human Bharatis she was seeing that were poor and were suffering, but the cats and the dogs. So she got sick. She went into a coma. She'd, of course, named the cats and names the dogs. And in her coma, she was constantly talking about them. So Swami Chidananda, Sivananda's very great disciple, actually went to the people who were taking care of her and say, look, you've got to try to get her out of this and come back to her normal consciousness, because if she dies in this shape, she's going to be reborn as a cat or a dog because she's obsessed with this. And if you can get her out of it, I will come and try to talk to her and see if I can clear her mind. I never learned how that came out, but anyway, yes, it does happen. And it's interesting to see animals. There are certain animals that are very attracted to humans. At Shivananda ashram, there was a small group of us from our American ashram. And every day we would sing kirtan. And there was an asthmatic cow. I mean, a cow, the poor thing went, when it breathed. And that cow, beautiful brown cow, would come as soon as we began the kirtan and stand there until it was over. Now, animals are sensitive to vibration. So that may be what attracted the divine name. But it also may have been a human being. People like to laugh, oh yes, they say it might be their aunt or their uncle. Well, it can happen. It is very rare, of course. As Yogananda said, rarely does a person become an animal after their death because they've created human karma, therefore they need to be in a human body to reap the human karma. But it does happen. Know this. It can be. I'm trying to think. Oh, yes. One time, Yogananda brought a cat. I don't know where he'd found the cat. He brought this cat to the Mount Washington headquarters, and he gave it to Brahmacharini Radhalila. I think I've mentioned her in previous satsang. And he said, I want you to take this cat and love it and be merciful to it because it was human in its previous life. I won't tell you what the cat did to become a cat in this life because you would hate it and loathe it so much you wouldn't have anything to do with it. And you need to look after it and love it. And it didn't have cat's eyes, it had human eyes. A couple of the disciples who had seen the cat told me about it and said that it was interesting. Sometimes some of the ashramites would be just talking together and they start to just feel weird. And they turn around and look, and the cat would be standing there with its human eyes just staring at them. And they got a really creepy feeling from it. So apparently been a creepy person. But it does indeed happen. The great masters have told us so. All right. All right, now, let's see, where are we? All right, well, we still have time. How much does grace figure into spiritual development? Okay, everything is grace. Somebody coming up on the street, slapping you and say, I don't know why, I just couldn't stand your looks and walking away. That's grace. Reaping karma. That's grace. Illness is grace. Thanks be to God for all things is not just a noble aspiration. So know this, everything that happens to you is the grace of God. I had 2 wicked stepmothers. That was the grace of God. Truly. I pray for them. Now, the second wicked one, when I became a yogi and I changed, she changed, and she loved me like I was her own child. Truly. She loved me profoundly, and I loved her. This happens. And this is why, again, like Yogananda said to those people, change yourself. If you really want to change your life, change your consciousness. Be a yogi, be a yogi, be a yogi. That's the fundamental message of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. So grace is everything. See it as from the hands of God and see there's a purpose and there's a lesson. And if you learn it, then you're really benefiting. You have to have mercy on yourself also and show grace to yourself. All right. What are your favorite quotes by Anandamayi Ma? Well, at first I thought, because first of all, every word out of Ma's mouth was divine wisdom, and not just divine in the sense that of a level of insight and intelligence, but it moved you. It somehow also elevated you just in the reading or hearing of it. Every word out of Ma's lips having having sat there and listened, often we spoke in a language I didn't understand. Every word was a benediction, was a blessing. There's a sentimental Christian hymn that says, "Write on my heart every word." And that was what it was like. And so I thought, how am I going to say this? Because every word she said was so wise. And then I got it. There was a tiny little book I had. Unfortunately, we don't have a copy here in the ashram. It was only like about that big. See, about kind of square and only about that. It was called Matrivani, which means mother's words or mother's sayings. It was at that time the only thing of mother's teaching available. Words of Sri Anandamayi Ma came later. And there was a book called Mother is Seen by Her Devotees that had a few things, she said, but really not much. So Matrivani was kind of it. So I had, you could put it in your pocket. I had it in my pocket and I was carrying it. I was in Los Angeles going down the street and I wanted to go to Ma so desperately. Ma had come to me. Our time's passing. I won't mention it. I won't describe. But literally, Ma had to come. And I'd seen. And I got the call. So that's all I wanted in life was to go to Ma. And I thought, well, how am I going to do it? How am I really going to manage? Costs money, and there's this and that. And so anyway, so I was thinking, well, first of all, should I? Though I felt I had the call. So there is this little tiny book. And so I took the book. I'm still walking on. And it was a while to the end of the block, so I even closed my eyes. I could tell by the feel I was still on this. And I said, Ma, please, I'm going to open this book at random. And let me open at something that will tell me whether I should come to be with you or not. So then I opened my eyes, I opened at random. The word said, why does he think he cannot do what he wishes? Well, that was pretty good. But devotees get crazes. Don't worry when you find yourself getting crazes. Just means you're a devotee of God. And I said, Ma, that seemed good, but I want you to tell me I should come to you and meet you. Now, how could I ask that out of a little book, not much bigger than this? What's it going to say? I opened it. It said, they may think that this body is far away, but actually it is always very new, and that was true. David said, where will I go to get away from God? So we were always with Ma, but we didn't know it. So it said they think this body is far away. However, when they can, let them come and meet this body. Well, there it was. So I did. So those are my two quotes from Ma. Not wisdom quotes, but come. I wish I could. There are no words. It wouldn't be just as Any experience of meditation you can put into words isn't very much of an experience. It's pretty low. Only that which you cannot put into words. That's the higher experiences of meditation. So people have said, what's it like to be with Ma? One time, someone asked Swami, Swami Kriyananda, what was Yogananda like? And he said, he didn't need to hesitate. He said he wasn't like anything because he was beyond thing. And so with Ma. What was it like to be with Ma? To be alive, I will tell you that. When you came into her presence, you became alive. Well, some did. Others sat there and were nervous and bored and left. And then there were the fakes that went back home and said, wasn't it wonderful? When the truth was they were really glad to be back home in America. But it was truly something wonderful. But Yogananda wrote a tiny little thing. He sang a lot. I think the people thought it was a little dingy, maybe. The words are this: he who knows, he knows. None else knows. So it was. Yes. So, Ma. She did say at one time, sometimes from the other side of the world, that would be America, I hear the call, the cry, Ma. Indeed. Okay. I understand for a mantra to be effective, it must be pronounced properly. When I mentally intone Soham with the breath, it sounds like O and The S in So and the H in Hum is difficult to mentally enunciate over with the breath. Am I overthinking this? No, it's a very intelligent question. When it says, you see, there's a section in Soham Yoga that says, Soham Yoga in 3 sentences. The first sentence, when the breath comes in, it makes a sound of O. When it goes out, the sound of hum, or maybe it says it a little differently, but that's the idea. Vidya, equal to this, has never existed, never knowledge. To know that, when we think of all the vast knowledge of Sanatana Dharma, all the karma, reincarnation, all the things we've been talking about, it's vastly secondary. The knowledge of soul and hum as a part of our being. Because you see, the body breathes because the inner part, the antakarana, cycles. Everything that exists in relativity has the 2 poles, and they rotate or vibrate alternately or dominant alternately. So that is the most important thing of knowledge of this duality, is that the sound made by the breath. Then it says, the third sentence, japa equal to this has never been and never will be. So, it isn't just the sound of so and hum. I mean, that is part of the power. Sound has power. But it is the doing of the sound. It is the making of the sound. You understand? Like, okay, so, hum, that there's the innate value of that vibration. But the act of saying so and the act of saying hum is also, because that's the basic thing. See, the impulse to act, like I get an itch. Well, the impulse comes and then I scratch. So the impulse is the root of the scratching. If there wasn't the impulse, I'd never do it, even if I remain itching and wish it would go away. So the enunciation of so and hum mentally in meditation, the act of it is itself part of the power and part of that which produces the Soham Bhava, the consciousness that is the realization of the consciousness that is embodied. And I don't mean the realization of the intellectual meaning, the consciousness behind it, which is the Atma Bhava, the consciousness of the self. Therefore, when it's done mentally, let me do it. Well, what are you doing? When you say mentally, you're imagining it. It's a little more than that because you do talk in your mind. Like I'll say, I'm talking right now. Well, I hear that like whisper. I'm talking right now. So I do hear the s and the and Soham. It's there, the whole thing. That's my experience. Now, you may be doing it and you're expecting more of what you should be doing. This often happens in meditation. Or you meditate and you think, well, I should be seeing lights and I should be seeing gods appearing. And Sister Durga told me, Durga Mata, Yogananda's very wonderful and great disciple. She said a man came to her and said, I'm not getting anywhere in meditation. I'm not getting anywhere in meditation. She said, you're sure? And he said, no, nothing happens to me. She said, nothing happens to me. He said, well, there's this feel of consciousness and bliss. And she said, well, that's it. That's what you're after. It's transcendental. It's beyond our physical feeling of happiness or joy. It's not emotion. But it's there. So, yes. So just listen. Think the S, think the H. If you don't fully hear it, as long as you see it's the intellectual, it's the will that counts, not necessarily the experience. I'm quite serious about this. I'm not just trying to assure you. It's the production of the soul and the soul and the production of the hum. But first it's so hum, very objective, and it slows and it becomes quiet until it's you're just there's no way to fully convey it. But don't doubt yourself and don't worry. And if you're doing the best you can, then that will come all right. And if you need things to change, don't worry, it will in time. I hope I'm giving an intelligent answer to this. But our sense, it won't be like sa and ha, because we're going sa, ha. So see, it's ha, ha, really, but so, like I can say, oh, hey. See, it's a different. Whisper O, whisper A. Now, how's your diet? All your pranas come from your diet. Is your diet really pure? Is it absolutely free from anything to do with animal stuff? And that means medications also. Are you ingesting anything that is of animal origin? Because animals cannot do this with their mind. And when anything you eat, the subtle energy goes into your bodies. It's conditioned by your body. So luckily, if you eat a potato, you don't turn as dumb as a potato, but the energies have no conditioning that a sentient being has. Therefore, when you eat that food, it immediately unites with your subtle bodies, especially your mental bodies, the Jnanamaya koshas, and is assimilated and begins, it's like fuel in a car. In other words, it isn't gasoline that makes your car move, it's a combustion that takes part in the engine that makes the car move. And so the food you eat, they say you are what you eat. Well, it's kind of true and not true. But it's the energy of that goes in. Therefore, be very, very sure. Be very sure. There is nothing of animal origin in your diet. And then be sure that your diet is a nutritious diet and a worthwhile diet, and it's worth eating. I'm taking a lot on this, but you see, and then what are you ingesting through your mind? Through what you read, through what you listen, through the company you have. Yogananda said, company is greater than willpower. You'll absorb the negative will, the negative impulse, and the negative polarity, orientation of those you're close with. Some people are poisonous. Their company is poisonous. So then, as the mind is refined, it all does come in time. I wish I could say something a little more right, exact. I have to kind of seemingly talk around the subject because, see, there is no vocabulary really about this. So I'm sorry. I hope I've given some idea. But just keep bonnet, bungi, making, made, doing, done. It's one of the things that yogis do say in English. Yogi Raj Shamacharya Nihira Mahashai especially used to say bonnet, bungi. Okay. Sorry. All right. Well, we just have a couple more questions. I struggle with a drug and sex addiction. I'm interested in walking a spiritual path, but as long as I struggle with these addictions, I feel I'll never get to it. I'm seeking help for my addictions, but I'd also like advice from a spiritual perspective on what I could do to free myself from these addictions or at least gain some control over them. Well, first of all, you have my sympathy. I don't think you're a bad person. We've all done it. We've all been addicted to alcohol. That's a drug. So we've all gone through it. All right. Follow yama niyama. Follow a pure diet, physically, mentally. That last part's not so easy. When you learn to play a musical instrument, you hit a lot of clinkers. I remember when I started playing the clarinet, oh my Lord, for some reason something happens and you go, the whole reed thing goes in you. Your poor parents, if you're a school kid learning the clarinet, you ain't going nuts. After a while, it doesn't happen anymore. You just keep at it and then you get better at it. Or as a piano, you make clinkers. Just do it. Of course, you should not want to do the negative things, but know what is the thing to do, such as sadhana, and do it, and do it, and do it. while supporting it with the purity of both physical and mental diet. That's important. If you keep doing it, when you start hacking your way through a jungle, if the jungle is 15 miles across, you'll think, I'll never get there. But you just hack, hack, hack. A theosophical lady one time said something very wise. Plod rhymes with God. Yep, it's just boop, boop. You can't brag about it. A lot of people like say, oh, last night I had such a wonderful dream. I had a dream. I saw Master so-and-so. Well, as Jesus said, verily they have their reward, because that's all they're going to get. But it doesn't matter if you can't boast about it, because there's been problems. You're doing it at least. You're getting there. Like people try to dance, well, their feet tangle up on each other. It takes a while to learn. So you keep up, you will manage. You will manage. There was a man that had ulcers on the outside of his body. I don't know what his illness was. And all kinds of misery. So he was in physical pain always, and he just couldn't sit still, of course. But he thought, well, so what? What I can do, I will do. And he did. And he said, then one day I woke up and I realized I'm not hurting and I'm not shifting around. And the ulceration was gone. But he hadn't realized it had been going away all this time. He hadn't realized. So don't worry. Don't be like the people that plant the seed and then dig it up and cut it open to see if it's germinating and therefore kill the seed. So do what you can do and do it steadily. Don't think I want to stop this or that. Think I want to do that which will heal me, that which will cure me. Not wanting to do something in itself doesn't help, especially in habits. Keep at it, keep at it. And the addiction loosens. It won't go away overnight. It would be wonderful if it did, and it can. But know this, someone asked Yogananda, what would you say are your most important teachings? Now, it's been so long since I read this. Yogananda said two things. I must confess, I don't remember the second. One was, everything in the future is bound to be better if you're making an effort now. You keep that always in mind. So you are going towards success. If it takes you 10 years, when you succeed, you'll have succeeded and it will be behind you. Now, I don't think it'll take you that long. But don't pay attention to, I've tried. It's right now I'm in. How do you walk? Even after all these years of walking, I remember learning to walk. I didn't want to walk. I crawled very well. But I've been walking for over 80 years. And now it comes easy. I don't have to think about I'm walking. But as long as you got to say yes, yes, as in the way of enunciating Soham, you do it, and one day you'll be doing fine. Remember how hard it was to learn to ride a bicycle, if you ever learned? I thought, never. I'll never do it. But my father was patient. And so, first of all, he went and bought me a bike. It was too big for me. I was only 6 years old. So I could, my feet wouldn't manage with the pedals. So he went and bought for cheap. I mean, he kept the good bike, but he bought this really cheap, junky thing, but it was smaller. And so I remember that he said, now, you just move with the pedals, but I'll be moving it along. He had one hand on my left handlebar, and then he was holding on to the back part. And he said, but you do move your feet, but don't worry, and I won't let you fall. So I went on, and after a while, he said, how are you doing? I said, fine. He said, well, for a couple of minutes, I haven't even been holding on. You're doing it now on your own. I'm glad to say I didn't fall over then. I just said, really? And then I kept on. God's on your side. All the gods are on your side. The great saints and masters are on your side. You're going to make it. You're going to make it. So then, that's what I say. Keep on keeping on. But sadhana is the key, but also purification. If you have a problem purifying your mind, at least purify the body. Because the body and mind are interconnected, and it will happen. Well, I took a long time on that, but it is important. I'm taking you seriously, as you see. You may wish I'd shut up. I'm beating the kind of thing to death, but it's important. It is because you become more and more alive. When we begin doing sadhana, we're pretty alive, but you become amazed at the dimensions of life that come up. So much more satisfying than the things that we become addicted to. That will happen. All right. This I am not sure about. This is a final question. I'm really sorry. Let me read it. It says, I have a gift of dreaming that I acknowledge but don't know how to use it. How should I move forward? If you could, for our next satsang, write to me about this and give me more of a description, because I'm not sure. Are you talking about visualization, like creative visualization, or you do mean that in dream, and that you find that the dreams can affect waking reality? And give me more ideas or example of it. Then I'll do my best to give an answer. But I don't want to interpret and waste your time giving you an answer that's irrelevant to your question. So, that's it. I forgot to look at my notes to see if there was anything, if I wanted to do any particular commercial at this time, as sometimes happens. I have thought of something I'd like to tell you about and recommend, but I need to, it has to do with the website, and I need to give you the address. So I won't until next time. So that's it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. These are wonderful questions. And this I can tell you, every one of you, your inner wisdom is awakening and will awaken more and more. So it's wonderful. I like talking to intelligent people, and I am indeed talking to intelligent people. So thank you very much. Hope to meet in a month.